How did France maintain a low inflation rate compared to its neighbors? As you may know, inflation has been an increasing global concern, and it has not spared French citizens from rising costs, especially for food and gasoline. Now, the COVID epidemic and the energy crisis have both adversely affected the stability of the world's financial system. And, in fact, governments all across the world have implemented a variety of regulations in response to increasing stability. Now, in a nutshell, the world economy has shrunken, thereby shaking up industries and supply chains. But above all, France has managed to be better than its neighbors in this aspect. According to reports, the year-on-year inflation in the Eurozone increased by 39.7% in July, reaching a 25-year high of 8.9%. And even though consumer price inflation in the Baltic republics is consistently above 20, it is only 7.1% in France. As a matter of fact, the increasing inflation rates around the globe would obviously mean that family expenses are rising quickly. While they are undoubtedly not immune to this situation, France is doing better compared to many of its neighbors. In fact, data from Eurostat from October 2022 reveals that France has the least projected level of inflation in the Eurozone. Starting in August, pensions were adjusted for inflation, which increased by around 4%. Rewards for people with disabilities and joblessness have also been raised. Wages in the government sector have increased by 4% over the past year, while many workers in the private sector have negotiated pay increases on a sector-by-sector basis. Now, according to the Consumer Price Index, the country's rate of inflation in August 2022 was 5.8%, as opposed to 7.9% in Germany, 9.1% in Italy, and 9.9% in the UK. In fact, the Eurozone's average inflation rate, according to Eurostat, is 10.7%, with France having the lowest rate at 7.1%. Currently, inflation is at 8.2% in the U.S. and 10.1% in the U.K. But what then explains this imbalance? Well, countries are currently facing hyperinflation as a result of the consolidation of significant economic shortfalls, historically high levels of corporate debt, and stimulus policies implemented by governments. Hyperinflation is most simply defined as an increase in prices that may cause a decrease in purchasing power. It is, in fact, a response to various economic circumstances. So the consumer rate of inflation of a country is meant to indicate the annual increase in the average household budget. Even if the value of a particular commodity increases equally in two nations, their inflation rates will vary, since the average family in one country would spend its money differently from the average family in another. So, most notably, the Baltic states actually spend more on food and gasoline than the European counterparts, which helps explain why their reported annual inflation is just greater than other countries. For instance, a typical Latvian family spends 25.9% of their money on food and 16.3% on utilities and housing costs. Also, an average American family spends 12.4% of their income on food and 25.4% on utilities and housing costs. However, the average Irish family only spends 13.8% of their income on bills and 12% on food, which clarifies why Ireland's consumer price inflation is half that of Latvia's and lower than that of the U.S. Now, the biggest issue that countries are currently facing that is causing inflation or even stagflation in some countries is the shocking rise in power prices. In response to this increase, France's overall expenditure for programs like the power voucher or the tariff shield to reduce home energy costs is anticipated to amount to at least 45 billion euros. By taking these measures, the inflation rate has been kept far lower than in most European economies. France has the third largest fleet of nuclear reactors in the world after the United States and China. This also makes it less vulnerable to a reduction in Russian gas supply as retribution for Western sanctions. However, a record number of reactor failures have reduced French nuclear power production to a 30-year low, escalating the continent's energy crisis. The grid operator RTE recently stated that there is little chance of a complete blackout in France this winter, but some power outages cannot be completely ruled out during periods of high demand. Since November or earlier, it has been on high alert to watch market developments. In January, RTE typically begins its winter monitoring. The operator of the gas grid stated that while margins are slim, the power system will not experience shortfalls in its base scenario. Additionally, France's dependence on fossil fuels has decreased thanks to alternative power sources, making it less susceptible to fluctuations in electricity prices. So, Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne recently announced that in order to lessen the burden on consumers from Europe's greatest energy crisis in years, France will cap electricity and gas price hikes for families at 15% next year. The limitations will set the state back $16 billion while preventing a more than twofold increase in home expenses. The government will continue to provide subsidies for the most vulnerable, providing 12 million households with checks up to €200. Borne predicted that the new gas price cap and new electricity price limit would both go into force in January. Earlier, the European Union's executive revealed measures to generate over $140 billion from energy providers to help protect people and businesses from skyrocketing prices that challenge economic downturns and insolvencies. France has already invested billions of euros in steps to reduce the inflationary effects of the market's rising energy prices. It pushed the state-run utility, EDF, to sell more electricity to rival firms at costs significantly below market prices, capping the rise in fixed power prices this year at 4%. Additionally, it set fixed residential gas rates at levels through October 2021. According to official projections, families with gas heating will, on average, pay €25 more per month in 2023 as opposed to an additional €200 without a price restriction. Supporters of the government's plan cite France's low August inflation rate of 6.5% as measured in terms of the EU as a whole, which was the lowest in the EU. The caps, according to some critics, are inadequate and will cause future financial hardship. France uses nuclear power for around 40% of its total energy consumption and 70% of its electricity generation, which is a significant disparity. Now, although France's nuclear business has its issues with layoffs and a significant maintenance backlog, this contributes to making it less subject to surprises related to gas prices, which have increased against the background of the war in Ukraine. In addition to using nuclear energy, France has experienced several government initiatives to stop hyperinflation from increasing, such as price freezes for gas and electricity, as well as gasoline refund for motorists. In France, gas prices have been set at levels from 2021, while increases in power prices are limited to 4% annually. This indicates that French families have so far avoided the skyrocketing utility costs witnessed throughout Europe. But guys, this is only the beginning. See, even the countries with high nuclear energy still become victims of the pitfalls of inflation. So what exactly makes France so special? Well, aside from energy concerns, countries are affected by the global economy in a similar manner of how businesses are affected by their institutional environment. In addition, wages have increased across a wide range of industries, both public and private. As a result, upcoming events could result in alterations to government strategy that have an impact on the rate of inflation, which may or may not have peaked. For instance, the European Central Bank's choice to boost interest rates for the first time in a decade in July may have had an impact on the balance of payments of various nations, which may have limited the ability of governments to enact policies that would limit rising prices. So eventually, the market price freeze will cease at the end of the year, but the price increase for both gas and electricity in 2023 is limited to a maximum of 15%. For the average user, this means an additional 15 to 20 euros per month beginning in January 2023 for gas and starting in February 2023 for power generation. In order to make the expenditures of fueling up a car with gasoline or diesel less expensive than it normally has been, the government has started providing drivers a fuel rebate that is paid at the pump. Above all, we cannot predict how France will be able to continue to maintain its economy and stay above its neighbors in the next few months. The conflict against Ukraine and its effects put the positive economic trends of recent years in jeopardy. Now, it is a matter of how France and Europe withstand the winter of 2022 to 2023. See, in the long run, the French economy is predicted to shrink, particularly in sectors that use a lot of energy. That is, if prices rise further or the energy supply is interrupted. Well, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you click that like button, all right? And if you haven't subscribed yet, ensure that you always click the subscribe and, most importantly, click that bell icon to be notified when a new video is uploaded. Also, feel free to leave a remark if you have any recommendations for videos. Hey, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.